Thank you. So we are still on the proposed amendment, and I think everyone who has wanted to speak on the amendment has now spoken. Um, there has been some discussion about the structure of the amendment in relation to the inclusion of the long-term lease as opposed to sale section. However, when we put it to a vote, we will put 3A to a vote separately. And to summarise, I think there's a sense that the fact that a report will be brought back to Council for consideration of further action could well include options to lease at that point. All right, so I will put. Yeah, did you want to close? Yeah, sure.
Thank you. If I could, I just want to clarify for the sake of the audience, but also for elected members, that when I include the words long-term lease, my intent there is a genuinely long-term lease, which is similar to a sale of a building or a disposal of a building. It's normally, more than 20 years, could be 40 years, that sort of length of time. And the reason that is, it's effectively a type of disposal, but it's a type of disposal that brings the building back in or retains the ownership ultimately of the building within the community, but is long enough to allow for the type of investment in that building that would be needed to turn it into a significantly enhanced cultural entity, but a sufficiently long period of time that enables a commercial or a philanthropic operator to seek a return. It is also enables, I guess, a city to be less focused on the normal sale price of a building and more focused on the activity and culture of the building and what it delivers ultimately, because you never lose the actual inherent value of the building through that process. So that's why, for me, that is an option that is worth considering. It might not be the option that is worth considering through this particular EIO process. It might be that even if A stays in there, that it would be something that would, after all of these conversations that are part of 3, would require the EOI process to be terminated, to be finished, but then further conversation to occur as a potential lease environment or the like. And it's that interconnection between not having to worry about so much about price, but worrying more about investment and cultural activity that I think is a nice one to have out there for further conversation. If we're not prepared to do that, then part of me would probably seek to end the process here and now and just move on. So because I don't see necessarily that we'll you know go down a process which will deliver something without significant changes at the moment. So anyway, I'm happy for A to be moved separately. I understand why some elected members see that as, well, it's not really the process we started with. We shouldn't be throwing it in now. But I wanted to explain that for me, it is that sort of sense of a long-term disposal that's really what was intended by that.
Okay, so we'll move 3A separately. All those in favour of 3A and against? And so that's lost. I'll move 3. Did you count that quick enough? Good job. 3B, C, D, and 4. All those in favour? And that looks to be unanimous. Thanks. So back to the item as amended by the inclusion of B, C, D, and 4. Do we have further speakers? Councillor Archibald.
Just very briefly, I just wanted to explain that the reason I opposed the issue of leasing was because in the context that it's written, it only relates to the proponents that are already on the books. That we are yet to conclude this process, and then we'll decide as a council at some point in the future where and how we go. So it has nothing to do with leasing to anybody else. It's simply leasing to those proponents.
Thanks for that clarification. Councillor Lawver.
Yeah, no, on the substantive motion, I just want to foreshadow that should this be rejected, I'm move an alternate recommendation that would, if it's accepted as a procedural motion, reject all the offers and move into a lease negotiation as deemed appropriate by the CEO. So just flag that for now. You know, I still just think that we're going to be wasting a bunch of time, wasting staff time on this, trying to get an outcome that, from the information we've been provided, we're really, really far apart. So I think, in my view, focusing on what we can do to bolster our cultural activity in that space and in Fremantle in a larger sense is a great use of the space, as Councillor Sullivan brought up. The heritage is not just bricks and mortar; it's the intention of what things were built for, and that would definitely fit that bill. So I would like to see a negotiation that included folks beyond 1, 3, 5, and 6 should it be a lease. And so, just like I said earlier, flag that is on the table should this be rejected.
Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. Yeah, just very briefly, I want to speak to my colleagues, but also to the community, to mention the point that, as Councillor Sullivan said, this council does significant heavy lifting when it comes to cultural outcomes, and there's no intention from this council to be seeking to limit that cultural activation in the city. And I think it's a reasonable question for us to ask whether or not we are best placed to realise the potential of Victoria Hall. And this process enables us to tick off one of those boxes about whether there is a different entity out there who could be able to realise the potential that hall offers, which we may not be able to do so. So I'm fully supportive of running this process and until its completion, and understanding and looking each other in the eye and saying yes or no as to whether we get a good outcome from it, and then taking the subsequent steps for that. So yeah, fully supportive of the process and look forward to seeing the report come back from the CEO.
Thanks, Councillor Mofflin. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. I think following on from Councillor Mofflin and Councillor Sullivan, I certainly don't want to see cultural spaces lost in the city, but whether or not we are the only people who can have cultural spaces or support cultural activities is a question that we're also not being asked to decide on tonight. And so I guess also to Councillor Mofflin's point, we've started this process and the best decisions are made when you have the most information. So in my opinion, and I'm supportive of moving forward because there might still be information out there that is important for us to make a decision about the future of Victoria Hall, that we're not being asked to make a substantial decision tonight. And I think jumping ahead without having all of the information in front of us wouldn't be quite right.
Thank you. Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, I'll throw my two bobs with, and I suppose I came into this really on the fence, and I think we can all see both sides. But I think what's clear is that no matter what happens tonight, in this vote, is that the intent is to protect this wonderful community asset. So I will support this process, but also point out that at this point in time, I don't think we're near where we need to be. But I will support the process to find out if we can get there.
Thanks, Councillor Kamada. And I mean, I too support the process and continuing it. I think it's in any of our lives, if we've started our negotiations with our absolute final offer, then perhaps we need to go back to negotiation school. I feel like these are initial offers and there's definitely a conversation still to be had. But the encouraging thing is that there's a number of the people who have responded to this EOI process who have suggested that they would like to keep this as a cultural and community facility. And I think that's a space that is worth exploring. I mean, I kind of bear in mind something like the Rechabite in Northbridge and say, at this point in time, would you say that should go back into public ownership? I suspect you wouldn't. It's being really ably and beautifully produced by private operator. So I think it is a sad world, actually, where only public ownership can guarantee that cultural spaces are delivered. It's actually an area where I think we would want to see a whole bunch of different organisations and private sector investment. But I think the other thing that's clear, and I think there's a narrative going on here that doesn't actually logically make sense. So the challenge I have is Town Hall, is an asset that we will have in perpetuity. And it needs significant investment, and that's investment that we are seeking very hard to deliver. And I think, through the budget process, it's been abundantly clear that that's something that's very well supported by councillors, and making Town Hall more accessible, more available, higher quality for performances is absolutely on our agenda. And then we have conversations about things like asset sustainability ratio and say, well, how many heritage assets should we be having in this portfolio? And then from all the conversations I've had with Fremantle Theatre Company and their board, it's clear that there's a significant amount of expenditure that needs to be had on this building. So the roof, the air conditioning, these things have all been raised with us over time. And this is by someone who is day to day in the building. So I guess I'm trying to reconcile a lot of those things. So that narrative doesn't actually kind of work. We can't do all the things for all the people. And if there are people who are prepared to invest in cultural facilities who are not the City of Fremantle, then it would be kind of mad to shut that down. So I think we should keep going in the process. I think the Director City Business has made it fairly clear that the numbers are where they are at the moment, and they would need to improve for it to make sense from our side. But I do think, if we conclude this process and we come to the point of a lease, that lease is going to have to sort of acknowledge that there's significant investment needed in that building. So it's a difficult situation. It's really hard to navigate. We all know, if we've had experience with heritage buildings, that this is not an easy space. But I would like to live in a world where actually private sector and philanthropists and people who love the arts are prepared to invest in arts facilities and not leave it all to government. So this only takes us forward to have a further conversation. It will come back to us for decision, but I think there's nothing wrong with proceeding at this point in time, and looking at other options should we need to in the future. Are there any further speakers? No. Okay. In that case, we will put the item to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Excellent. All right. Thank you. We will move on to the Memorandum of Understanding. In fact, we might, I suspect there may be more interest in the beach enclosure at Bathers Beach, so we may go to that one if that's all right with councillors. All right, so I ask for someone to move the officer's recommendation. Yeah, Councillor Lorver, seconded by Councillor Williamson Wong. All right, did you wish to open on that? Councillor Williamson Wong. All right. Councillors, over to you. Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, you will guess that I'll be voting against this, as I have in the past. But I did just want to say that I am excited by the idea that Bathers Beach becomes a really unique kind of environment that is a better beach and a more interesting beach, a different type of beach for people of Perth to go to. But I'm still not convinced that shark, what are we meant to call them? Barriers, yes, are really the way to go. And I'll have that philosophical argument probably till I die. Hopefully not by a shark attack. But the reality is for me, that I just think it's an enormous amount of money to spend on a fear that can be overcome in other ways. It just is, in the course of a 10-year period, we're talking about over $1 million being spent, whether it's taxpayers' money or elected member, ratepayers' money, and we've got better things to spend that money on, which actually give an outcome for the future. So I'll leave it at that. But I don't want anyone to think that it's not because I don't support Bathurst Beach. I think it's an amazing place, and I think there are some amazing things that can occur there. It's not my personal favourite beach. I think the shark facility could probably be better located in other areas where it might serve a broader community, but at the same time, I do understand the opportunity that it might bring in terms of accelerating the way Bathurst Beach develops into the future.
Councillor Lorver?
Yeah, while I've some sympathy for the comments from Councillor Sullivan, I think that this is a pretty good option for this space. It's, as Councillor Sullivan pointed out, shark attacks are mostly a psychological thing. They're very few and far in between, thankfully. And if this gives a place that people can swim comfortably and enjoy Fremantle, I think it's worth a shot. Worth for us to do. When we get to the point of looking at support from the local businesses to help with maintenance, I'll hopefully I'll be a strong advocate for allowing community access to that, and I don't think that will be an issue. But that is a conversation for a later date. So hopefully we can get some buy-in from the folks that are around there to help with the maintenance. So it's not just all borne on ratepayers, but I think eliminating that psychological barrier for some folks that, for whatever reason, just don't want to swim in the ocean and the beautiful ocean that we all live next to. I think if we can make a space that's wonderful and safe for them, and in our city, let's do it. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, councillors. Any further? So I might just say a few things on this. I mean, obviously, we're really delighted that the state government has come to the party on this one. It was a job to convince them, I think, that Bathurst Beach was the right location. But I think once we sort of worked through the logic of other beaches already having considerable pressure on them and high usage, and the fact that there are, and the state government is aware, as are we, that there are a lot of people who will not get in the ocean or river for fear of sharks. And I mean, Councillor Sullivan has a point that this is in effect a psychological barrier. But that the state government, once we took them through the logic that this is actually a really underutilised beach that could do with increased visitation and would have the benefit for the local businesses, and that some of the key issues that have been raised around this we feel like we can address. So availability of parking has been raised a number of times, but I mean, I think some of the things we can observe from the other enclosed swimming areas is that a lot of the swim traffic is actually early morning, which is probably a time where it's fairly easy to park down there. It is a time that's easy to park down there. The TAFE car park is now being made available on weekends when students aren't there, and that's obviously right in the vicinity of the beach. And it is within 100 metres of the train station. It's not a terribly long walk from public transport. The other issues that have been raised are the issues of change rooms and amenities, public toilets, and I think that is a good conversation to have about Bathurst Beach generally. I mean, we do have facilities at the end of the Esplanade and up at Arthur Head, but for a while now, I think it's been clear with the activation of Codogo Art House and other things down there that the amenities could definitely be improved. So that is now a very live conversation with Department of Transport and the local businesses down there to try and address that. So all in all, I think it's a really good opportunity. I think we're optimistic that the price will be closer to the state government grant than at the upper estimates, and that the ongoing maintenance, there may be some arrangement we can come to with local businesses who will also benefit from it. So still some work to be done, but certainly if we can agree this tonight, it gives us a really great opportunity to try and get it in by next summer, during next summer. Councillor Williamson-Wong?
Thank you. I didn't think I was going to speak on this one, but turns out I do have things to say. I guess wanting to note that parking has definitely come up in conversations around this beach enclosure, and responses around the TAFE car park and the closeness to public transport are both very good points, I think, and responses. I guess my excitement for this project also comes from the idea that it adds a lot of amenity to the people who currently live in our CBD or might work also in our CBD, and the opportunities for people who are already in Fremantle to be able to use a beach, and this acting as a sort of catalyst for further improvements of the space as a whole, especially as we want more and more people to be living in our city centre, being able to offer spaces that feel open and exciting, I think will be a game changer for people wanting to also live. We know as Australians we're not very good at letting the whole 2x2 house on a white picket fence picture go, and the more and more I guess fun amenities we can provide in our CBD, I think the better. So I look forward to this not just being a beach for people who maybe are driving in or coming in from far away, but also people who might be in our city already, and maybe just encourage them to stay after work, and buy some fish and chips or things like that.
Thank you. All right. If we've got no further debate, Councillor Lawver, are you happy not to close? Yep. I'll put it to a vote. So all those in favour and against, Councillor Sullivan against, and that is carried. Thank you. So we'll now go, we might go back to the Memorandum of Understanding for Library Connect. Have a mover for that one, Councillor Archibald, and seconded by Councillor Williamson-Wong. All right. Did we want to speak to this one at all? Councillor Williamson-Wong?
Thank you. Just to say that I want to note how incredible of a program this is, and that it's very exciting and amazing that the City of Fremantle is one of the first to start a program like this. We've seen from the reports that it's a very effective and useful program to have in our city, and that the use has increased alongside cost of living and housing crises that we're in at the moment. And so very excited to see this moving forward.
Thank you, and I'd second that and say that I think, one of the things about this program is it's such a living example of good collaboration between the sector and local government. And it was interesting. I met some other mayors who are dealing with homelessness issues, and a lot of them hadn't heard about Library Connect. And so, I mean, one of our jobs is probably to promote better what an opportunity this is for as a model for other local governments to take up. Because the bang for the buck, if you like, for this program is ridiculously good. We are avoiding people ending up in homelessness for really a tiny amount of money. And I did ask officers, are we sure we couldn't give them more money to run this program? Because honestly, it is such a good investment. We are avoiding costs that probably go to a broader system, not necessarily our own system, but in doing that, we're also avoiding, I guess, the tragedy that is homelessness on our streets. So it's a lovely testament to the library that it feels like a safe place for people to come and start having conversations where they don't know where to go in terms of their housing or financial security. So it's a really nice model. I know later on this year we have the Zero Homelessness Conference here in Fremantle, and I think it'll be a really great opportunity to profile this service and what we do. All right, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Excellent. So we're going to go to the traffic calming policy. I'll move for that one. Councillor Williamson-Wong, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Over to you.
I'll be quick. I just want to thank the officers for the work on these policies. they were obviously deferred the first time, and I feel very excited about how they've come back to us with the emphasis on low-cost urban treatments. I think we'll be able to deliver, hopefully, many more projects for our community and have a broader impact. So I'm very excited to see these come through.
Thank you. Councillor Archibald?
Yes, thank you. I concur with Councillor Williamson Wong. I think it's been great the way in which the staff have taken on board some of the issues that people have raised in the community. And so I look forward to seeing some more innovative ways of enabling a street to be shared more by pedestrians, cars, and anybody else who happens to be in it. So thank you very much to the staff, and I look forward to seeing it be implemented.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. All right, I'll put that one to a vote then. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. All right, Waste Services Review. How do we have no one in the public gallery for this? All right. Can I just note that Councillor Thompson is on a leave of absence. It's an approved leave of absence. It just wasn't noted in the papers. So apologies to Councillor Thompson. He is on leave. Anyway, as we were, Waste Services Review. Do we have someone who'd like to move this one? Councillor Archibald, seconder by Councillor Williamson Wong. Yes, we're moving the officer's amended recommendation as shown on the screen. Is that right? Yep, we know. Yeah, we know what we're moving. Good, excellent. It's in the additional documents, and I think it reflects some conversations that were had previously. All right, Councillor Archibald, did you wish to open on this one? Councillor Williamson Wong? Look, I think for the benefit of public transparency, it's important to highlight that this is it's a change that won't affect a lot of residents, but that we are, through this decision, making a decision to get out of commercial waste collection. And I think it's just important to note that publicly that is what the implication of this decision is. It's not a decision that's been taken lightly. It's been a conversation, I think, that we've been having at council for what feels like at least a year now. And that effectively this will allow us to deliver more efficient waste services and I guess avoid a significant investment that we would need to make in the future in terms of fleet. That said, we are still really keen to kind of ensure that particularly micro businesses, smaller businesses that generate a similar amount of waste to your average house don't need to necessarily engage commercial waste collection services. So there is consideration in this of a waste collection service for those smaller, if you like, commercial premises. So just for transparency, I think it's really important that we highlight that this is quite a significant decision. It does follow similar decisions of other local governments such as Vincent, who have also gone down this path, and we've been able to learn from their experience. Councillor Moughlin?
Thanks. Yeah, and I just wanted to pick up on that last point that you made in regards to the City of Vincent and commend staff for taking learnings from other local governments who have gone down this path and look to implement this in the most seamless fashion possible. So thank you for doing that, and good to see that we are learning from others. And also just to point out as well that the historical commercial waste collection that the city was completing most probably had a whole bunch of anomalies that were in there, and it's good that as part of this process that we'll essentially create a level playing field for waste collection in the city.
Thanks. Councillor Lorber?
There's a lot to like in this report, and thanks staff for bringing it forward. Supporting our small businesses is really great, and for me, dragging ourselves into the 21st, 22nd century with our high density building servicing in the CBD and other areas is probably the most underrated and not talked about aspect of this. Has a potential to really help improve our city in significant ways that may not seem like much right now, but once something like that is in place, we'll certainly notice a difference. Um, and that being said, I just wanted to also note that we do, in essence, subsidize this service right now as a council, and when we should, move away from that and start to implement this, all that money that we're not spending on commercial waste will be, part of our normal budget process. And there are a few items in there that potentially could be considered, but it'll also be anything else in the budget could also be considered as well. So, but anyways, I just thank staff for bringing this forward. It seems like it's a great timeline, and I think it's going to make a huge difference. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Before I move my amendment, I too would like to highlight the things that I'm particularly looking forward to. Certainly, the being able to deal with new apartment buildings and existing apartment buildings in a way that hopefully creates a better system for the people living in the apartments, but particularly a better system for those that have to walk past them on collection day. Ultimately, will be something that's well worth looking forward to, and also an expansion of the types of waste opportunities that residents, particularly of those buildings, will have, is another thing to look forward to. A part of the problem of waste collection, particularly in very built-up urban areas, is that it spills out onto the street. And as someone that's lived in the West End, as someone that's worked in the West End for a very long period of time, it has increasingly become a problem. And hence I'm going to move my amendment to add a clause 5. And I'll move that way and speak to it in a sec.
Excellent. Is there a seconder? Councillor Moughlin. Back to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. It really worries me, certainly in the street where I work and in other streets nearby. There are rubbish bins, both residential and commercial, both ones that we collect and ones that other people collect, that are on the street 24/7, 7 days a week. They're not meant to necessarily be there. It's very hard to police. But I know what is also happening. It's because people are using their laneways to park their car and using the street to park their rubbish bin. And it actually kind of needs to be the other way around because we can't have these rubbish bins out on the street for all of that period of time. The reality is people try and use them as they walk past them. People try and get all the rubbish out of them to take to the containers for change centre. People kick them over and spill them out. They blow over and spill out. They get overfilled and then they spill out. And that is probably the single most significant source of the rubbish that people talk about in the West End of Fremantle. It is generated from that. And so I think as part of any reform in waste, we need a system where if we need to tighten up on the way in which rubbish bins are put out in the street. I understand that, on collection night, particularly with our service, it's pretty normal for residents to put their rubbish bin out and bring it in the next morning. But we need a process that actually guarantees that it's out there for as short a period as possible. And actually the bigger bins, the big waste bins, the commercial bins, really don't need to be out in the street anyway. Inevitably, even if they are out in the street, the rubbish truck driver actually has to get out and shift them to be able to pick them up. So they might as well not be out in the street at all. They might as well be inside the property, wheeled out by the rubbish truck collector, and then put into the truck. And I hope that our staff can work on strategies, policies, and even a local law, if it's necessary, to actually ensure that we can clean that act up and make for cleaner streets in the city. It's really clear to me that so much of the complaint about dirty streets is actually the rubbish, not so much the physical footpaths themselves. It's the amount of rubbish that is left out in the street and allowed to spill out. So that's why I'm putting this forward, and I look forward to finding out from staff what sort of strategies they might come up with over the next year or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I'll support Councillor Sullivan's amendment. I considered putting in something additional, but thought if we're doing a sort of review, it can be covered by the same sort of line of thinking. But completely agree with what Councillor Sullivan's saying. I think the other challenge that we need to address is the number of different commercial operators coming through the city to collect bins at different times, and particularly when you look at a place like Paddy Troy Mall, which is a fairly constrained space, having multiple operators coming all day and all evening, it just makes what would be quite a nice mall space, a truck reversing and bin collecting zone for far too much of the time. So I think there's a real opportunity in looking at this in reviewing how rubbish collection operates in the CBD. To say, how do we tighten that up? And if you look to European cities, and I appreciate we don't yet have the density of a European city, we do seem to still produce an awful lot of rubbish for a place that doesn't have that density. There are very prescribed times in which rubbish collection services can operate, and there are also prescribed times during which you can put out your bin. And I think you get fined if you put out your bin outside those prescribed times. And I'm not suggesting we go that far, but I think on both the resident side but also on the commercial operator side, there are ways that we can tighten it up, consistent with being a town that attracts a lot of visitation from people who don't live here as well. On the amendment, anything further? No, let's put it to a vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. And back to the item as amended. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous as well. Thank you. Did elected members wish to speak on the remaining 4 items? Anyone? Going. Okay. I'll move the remaining 4 items. See 16, 17, 18 and 19 on block, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? That's unanimous. So we can declare the meeting. We have no motions of which previous notice has been given, urgent business, late items, confidential business. So we can declare the meeting closed at 7:42. Thank you.